Hey guys, Huju here. It's the end of April, beginning of May. Flying season is now upon us up here in the Northeast. I looked out the window this morning and I saw green grass. So the ground is actually turning. The grass is. The plants are starting to come up. The trees have budded. They haven't leafed out yet. You know, we're kind of behind a lot of the states here with that. But it's definitely, I can feel it. I can feel the change in the atmosphere where I wake up and I get this feeling that it is now flying season, where up until this point it hasn't been feeling that way. It's been cold and miserable and snowy and just haven't had the motivation to do much. So now, once this wet part of the season gets through us, we've had a couple of weeks of just nothing but gray, wet, drizzly and rainy conditions. I think the sun poked itself out once and it scared the daylights out of me. I didn't know what it was up there. But that's how it's been. And once that all clears out of here and the ground dries up a little bit, the sun comes out, I got some planes I got to get up in the air. Something that I just built this winter. Alright, the reason for this video, of course, is somebody had watched one of my YouTube videos and made a comment while I was flying this Waco here, realizing that I flew a lot of planes with the Lemon Stab Plus 7-channel receiver. I think that's what it's called. Yeah, the Lemon Stab Plus. I have 3 airplanes, I think, that are active with that right now. I got this Timber right here, the Waco, and over my head the 1450 millimeter P51 uses the 7-channel Lemon Stab Plus receiver. So what he wanted to know is how I set that up, and you know, the details about flying with that thing, because apparently he had a problem with a plane that he had that receiver installed in, and he lost the airplane. So I'm going to go ahead and cover what I can on that. The reason these planes are out here is because this plane is fully together. I store it fully together, so I can use this as an operational prop. The Timber is out because I have the receiver in there and it's more visible looking through the top with the wing off what it looks like when it's installed. I now have a receiver out of the bag that I can use as a model to show you all, thanks to Captain Chaos Canada. He let me borrow that before he left town. Some of the video you're going to see is going to have Captain Chaos Canada in it. He's going to, at some points he was holding the camera for me while I was doing some stuff, but he's since back on the road. He was in town, not by choice, you might say. If you look back at some of my videos, you'll see 1 or 2 of my videos where he's in there. I think when we were flying the 2 biplanes in formation, they were both his. He was here for that. And he filmed one of my P-51 flights. But he was in town because he had a major malfunction with his truck. He's a trucker from out of Canada, and he drives all the way across the United States. And just coincidentally, about 6 miles from here, his truck had a major meltdown while he was driving through. I guess in NASCAR terms, you might say it blowed up. It done blowed up. So yeah, he blew an engine on a brand new tractor. It blew up, left fluid all over the road, threw a rod, you know, one of the integral parts right out the side of the motor case. So he was here for a few days, so we flew one day and he helped me with the video on some of this. And well, enough of that. Let's get to the Lemon Stabilizer Plus 7-channel receiver. Alright guys, this is what the 2 versions of it look like. It's a little tricky here because they actually substituted a satellite receiver, which is not a Stab Plus, just to show you the vertical pins. But you can get this Lemon 7-channel Stab Plus receiver in 2 forms. You can get it with the servo connections going straight out the back, kind of hooking up horizontally, or you can get them where they go down through the top at the one end of the receiver. These are the vertical connections. This one is a 7-channel Stab Plus. It doesn't have the satellite antenna hookup like the 7-channel Stab satellite. The 7-channel Stab Plus has the self-leveling mode along with the stabilizer, but it doesn't have the satellite antenna hookup. It's also a diversity antenna with 2 antenna wires. The satellite antenna has 1 single antenna wire because you're going to be hooking up a satellite antenna. But they just put them in the picture here just to show you the variations of pin connections. You can get this one here with a pin connection like this or like this, the vertical or the horizontal. Now there are 2 manuals specifically for this Stab Plus receiver. One of them is a 17-page basic instruction manual for operational purposes. Another one is this one here, which is a 43-page one, and it has more advanced setup information in there. It's also easy to get really overwhelmed with all the information in there, all of the advanced stuff you have to sort through sometimes just to find the stuff that you need to operate the receiver. So I just needed to know the basics, and that's all I'm really going to talk about here in this video. And there's really a lot of information in that when you think about it. This is the satellite receiver. You want to ignore that plug. There's actually a push button switch in there. And on a stabilizer plus receiver, that will say aux2/B for bind. aux1 is up here like this, and then your normal 5 channels are in between. 1 is throttle, 2 is aileron, 3 is elevator, 4 is rudder, 5 is gear. Now, the thing specific about the Stab Plus that you need to know, the stabilizer does use one of the operational channels. I know on my other stabilizer, the Eagle Tree, I get to choose which channel I'm going to use the stabilizer on. The Lemon Stab Plus has that programmed in. It uses channel 5, the gear channel. There's no option. So if you're going to use the stabilizer function and the self-leveling function, you must leave channel 5 open. You can't put a servo connector in there. So if you have a plane that you use channel 5 on, like the gear, it's labeled gear here, you're going to have to move your gear control to either aux1 or aux2, because 5 is going to be dedicated to the stabilizer. Alright, so the binding is going to be on aux2, the aux2 or the bind plug. It's this last one over here on this side. On this receiver it says bind, but on the Stab Plus it says aux2/B. That's where you do your normal binding. The dip switches, I can get on there without bouncing around. I would use my tripod, but I can't seem to get this thing to focus in right with the tripod this close. Dip switches are labeled 1 through 6. You can see they're all down here on this end. They're little toggle switches or sliding switches. This is the off up here where the labels of what they control. That's the on position. They're all off, and you should get it all with them in the off position because this receiver doesn't know what it's going into. So if you get the receiver, make sure you put them all in the off position if they're not. The first 3, 1, 2, and 3 are simply for your flight control channels, your operational channels, your aileron, elevator, and rudder. What those do on a receiver is for your stabilizer, your gyro, they are your reversing switches for your gyro or stabilizer input. So if you're flying your airplane normally, and your flight controls work correctly, and your servos are working correctly, but you turn on your stabilizer, and the stabilizer is doing reverse corrections for what it should be doing, or your auto leveling is giving you the opposite flight control commands that it should be doing. These switches, 1, 2, and 3, for those channels, you can reverse the gyro input to those channels. That's fine. That's great. That's nice to have. Nice feature. 4, 5, and 6, those are delegated to the type of airframe that you're going to be putting it in. And if you're using just one connection, servo connection for each flight control, if you got one connector for the throttle, one connector for the aileron, one connector for the elevator, one connector for the rudder, a normal mode where you're, even if you have 2 servos for your elevators, and even if you have two servos for your ailerons, as long as they're Y connected to one particular command plug, that's a normal setup. And if you have a normal aircraft setup, you want to switch your channels 4 and 5 to on. 4 and 5 you select on. 6 you leave off. That is for a normal wing type setup for your aircraft. Now if you do have an aileron system where you want to operate your ailerons independently, so you want to have two channels designated for your ailerons. You're going to have your aileron channel and an aux channel, for example. You're not going to be having a Y connector to operate them on a single channel. You're going to operate them on two channels. Then you're going to move channel or switch number 6 up. So it'll be 4, 5, and 6 would be on. But for most people, it should be 4 and 5 on, everything else off. And of course your potentiometers here are just like any other potentiometer. They're in the 50% range right now with them vertical, or when they're all pointed straight up. And again, this is a satellite receiver I borrowed from Captain Chaos, Canada. So the Stabilizer Plus receiver is just going to have a button down in there, and you're not going to have this connection. The reason for the button is some people want to have this thing is defaulted. It's program defaulted that it operates on a 3-position switch that you choose. And the default setup is the off position is at one end, the middle position is stabilizer, and then the far position is level or safe. So normally when you put this in and you set it up on your aircraft and you set up a switch for it, stabilizer mode is going to be the center position, and off and safe are opposite ends of that switch. And I'm using a default setting, so right now it's in the off. The middle stability mode is stability mode.
Safe mode.
The far position is safe mode. That's the default setting for the receiver mode as well. Switch. You can, if you want to, change that. And this is where some of the instructions get kind of complicated and it's hard to remember. So if you power up the receiver by powering up on any one of these pins, and you got your binding plug across these last 3 pins right here, contacts, you can change the orientation of the switch or the throw commands for your toggle switch for using the stabilizer by pushing the button. Remember, that has a button on here and not a connector. If you want to change the switch control commands for the position of the switch for stabilizer and safe and off, you got to hold it down for more than a second. If you just want to change the bank angle allowances for safe mode, you hold it down for less than a second. I did the half a second deal there because I didn't want to be limited to 15 degrees bank in safe. But this is where you put the binding plug to do that. The other significant thing about this particular receiver, unlike some of the others, is in the manual, especially the 43-page manual, it urges you to make sure that when you install this receiver in your airplane, as long as these are at the back of the airplane, it does not matter whether you have it flat, whether you have it on its side like this, or even if it's upside down in the airplane. It's been tested in those configurations, and all you have to do is reset the level when you power it up. But they do say make sure these pins are always at the back. If you're not aware of that, you could have issues. I don't know what those issues are. I've never done it that way. I've never mounted my receiver in any orientation other than sitting flat. This is the rear, pointing towards the rear, and that's towards the front.